I have decorated it with stickers on the front cover, on the inside cover, and title page where I also wrote the starting date, and the back inside cover. The first page outlines what a weekly schedule might look like, and right now it's sort of idealistic because I'm just focusing on one language at a time. But as you can see, I am interested in getting to a point where I can balance language study between French, Mandarin, Japanese, and Korean at the same time. I guess right now this is more like a vision board than a real weekly schedule. While I was thinking about getting back into language study and what it would look like to fit it into my life right now, I saw this YouTube video which suggested a daily study schedule that sounded really appealing to me. It's 15 minutes of review, which you might do in the morning, 30 minutes of learning new material, which you could do anytime during the day, and another 15 minutes of review, which you might do at night, like before bed. I appreciate a good spaced repetition system, and this review, learn, review, review, learn, review format sounded perfect. So I asked myself, based on my current habits and schedule, when and how could I fit in opportunities for language study? I decided that morning was a good time for listening and shadowing exercises because I cook and clean around the house and I could commit to listening to something. Because I often watch YouTube when I'm eating, I knew that meal times were an opportunity to put on a YouTube lecture or an online language class instead. And I figured that the good times to make productive use of language learning apps on my phone are when I'm commuting as a passenger to and from work, and when I'm lying in bed on my phone at night and in the morning. At this point in my planning, I hadn't totally determined which language learning resources I had available, so I started to make this spread to write down what materials I have on my shelf, and also to add what I find available online for free. One of my primary goals was to make use of free resources instead of spending any money. And it was at this point that I had an incredible revelation. I use Libby to manage my ebook library loans, and while searching for resources in my library catalog, I stumbled upon a collection of Pimsleur language audiobooks. I checked out the Japanese language course immediately and put the French Level 1 series on hold, and I wanted to get right into the study, but first, I set some language goals. I think it's really valuable to identify short-term language goals because the long-term goals are pretty much always the same. You want fluency, you want to communicate, you want to engage with media in your target language, and actually be able to enjoy it. It's hard to feel like you're making any progress towards those long-term goals until you arrive and suddenly realize that you've reached that desired point of comprehension. So for languages I used to study but haven't in a long time, the goal is to regain past competency by reviewing old materials, and then make a study plan for how to tackle what I don't know. Also to improve my pronunciation. I also wrote future goals that are not an immediate priority, but are still on my mind, which includes learning new vocab, grammar study, and getting back into kanji. For languages I haven't studied at all yet, I want to learn basics of pronunciation, tones, alphabets, and beginner phrases. I'm also wondering whether I want to break my no-buy determination to save up for the Talk to Me in Korean textbooks. But the fact that I realized that Pimsleur is available for free through my library means that I can push that decision back for another time. I started this notebook in the 8th week of 2025, so I wrote week 8 at the top. I did one Pimsleur lesson a day for the first 4 days, except one ambitious day when I did 2. This totaled 2.5 hours of study. I wrote a reflection and recap before I went on to the next week. In week 9, I only studied a couple of days, so I decided to stay on this page for week 10 instead of starting a new one. The consequence of my distraction is that I squandered some of my time with my library audiobook because now there are people in line for it and I'll have to wait a few weeks until I get it back. Luckily, I have 3 other languages to study and other audiobooks are available, so I will probably be turning my attention briefly to Korean and then to French as I cycle through library books and holds for the next few weeks. It's a good reminder not to be too attached to your plans because a couple weeks ago I thought this looked like a nice weekly schedule, and now because of practical reasons, I'm finding that it makes sense to focus on one language at a time for 2-week intervals. I expect this language learning journal will continue to evolve, so if you'd like to see how it changes over time, I invite you to subscribe. And happy studying, everybody!